Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pitchless Selling Podcast. Super excited for today. If you're new here, thanks a lot for joining us. And of course, if you've been here before, super glad to have you back and excited for today's episode. We've got a special guest that we'll talk about here in just one second. But just as a reminder, the Pitchless Selling Podcast is generally focused on sales in all facets of sales. That's selling, closing, prospecting, sales leadership. But we also talk about general business and some mindset stuff as well. I like to mix that in. Really, our goal here is to give you some stuff, give you some advice, some thoughts, some information, talk about our experiences in a way that helps you be better at your job, both now and helps you over your career as well. So with that being said, we've got a special guest, like I said, Brandon Howell. I have known Brandon for a really long time. Super excited. We're laughing a little bit because we've been waiting to get this podcast done and get Brandon on the show here for a while. We finally made it happen today. So Brandon has been in sales for almost a couple decades, and he's got 11 or 12. He was trying to do the math on it, but somewhere around 11 or 12 years of experience in sales leadership.
A little over a decade.
There we go. A little over a decade is good. Yeah. So been a sales leader for over a decade now. He's got a lot of really, really good experience, both in sales and as a sales leader. So his advice and experience, I know, is gonna help a lot of people, and so that's why we've been trying to get him on for so long. So with that said, I want to dive into today's episode. Today we're going to talk about something that has come up an awful lot in the coaching conversations we're having with a lot of the folks that we've been coaching, the sales reps that we've been coaching. I'm not sure why, but lately especially, there's been a lot of talk about scripts and company prescribed slides, and this sort of idea, even in the sort of sales training world of, you have to. It's almost like you got to become this like sales robot. It's like. For some reason, everyone thinks that it's like, hey, I got to say the exact right words, the exact right way. I got to look a certain way. I got to act a certain way or talk a certain way. And so we're going to give our thoughts on that, our thoughts, and maybe even back that up with some experience. So I think, for me, I'm going to focus more on the selling side of things, this sort of sales process, closing deals. And, Brandon has a lot of great advice on the prospecting side of things. With that being said, let's start with prospecting. So, it doesn't matter what type of prospecting you're doing. If you're talking to people, whether that's, even like knocking on doors, trying to sell someone or book a meeting for something, if you're cold calling people, really just trying to generate leads for your business, that's kind of what we're going to focus on. So right off the top, why don't you just give us your opinion? Just whatever you think, straight up opinion on scripts in general.
Yeah, I sure. That definitely. I'll also appreciate the introduction.
Absolutely.
I was giggling a little bit because we have known each other for a really long time and have been kind of in the same sales circles over the period of my career, and super thankful for that relationship and you inviting me onto the podcast. So I definitely appreciate that. Prospecting in scripts is an interesting one because I think scripts accomplish something pretty good for new reps, right? Gives them a baseline of what maybe a call should sound like, or what it should look like from a strategic perspective, like where you should go, what you should say, when you should ask questions or not ask questions, when you should go for a close. And so I think they can serve a purpose, but I think reps that are a little experienced, by little experience in the cold calling world, I mean like 2-3 weeks into the role, you should ditch the script, right? I want my teams, when they are talking to their prospects, to have it be much more conversational, right, than scripted. And so it's not necessarily like when you're meeting up with a buddy or a friend or this podcast, right? Like we don't have a script that we're going through. Like you're not going to script a conversation with another human being in general in the world. So why would you script a conversation with another human being when you're talking about business outcomes or challenges that you're facing and that sort of thing? So I think scripts are good when you first start out as a guide. And then I think as you get some experience, you should really drop that script and have it more conversational. And that'll come with experience, right? But that's what I use them as. Is I'd much rather my team have a conversation and take it from their personal experience, where you're not using scripts, right? You're not talking to your mom and dad or your uncle or aunt or friends or anybody on the street, a first date, right? Like things aren't scripted. And I think that conversation should be the same way in the business world too.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I think, there's a couple of things that you said I think are really, really important. First of all, you'd mentioned this, I've never used that language before, but I like it, which is like the guide versus a script. I think that's really interesting, especially with prospecting, because, I think that there are absolutely some, like, think about when people create scripts to be used, why are they doing that, right? Well, they're creating scripts because it's based on probably things that have worked in the past. Right? Typically, it's like, hey, here's the process we want to follow. Here are the exact things you can say to convey your message in a way that makes sense. Or these are things that we've said or someone has said in the past that has worked. And so I think it's interesting to look at that like from the guide as a guide perspective rather than like an actual script. But I think the most important piece of that with what you said was the human-to-human interaction side of things.
Yeah, and people are different, right? Like what you say and how you do it, or what you say specific to a situation might not work for me.
That's right.
And vice versa. And I don't want to pigeonhole my reps into a specific situation where they need to say this or they need to say that. I want them to be conversational and relaxed, and I want them to be themselves, right? I don't want them to be a robot. And I think when you give a script and they're following along to that script, it's very robotic. And I don't want that.
Yeah.
Right. Consumers are too smart. People are too smart. They get too many phone calls. They get the scripts. Like, I'd much rather it be conversational, whether you're talking acquiring new business or you're talking expanding specific accounts, like whatever that might be. I'd much rather have it be a conversation, use the script as a guide rather than end all be all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. I think the point about everyone being different is really good. In fact, there was back when I was in tech sales, I remember I was leading a team. We had 20 plus, just under 30 people on the team. And I remember one of the reps on our team was having a little bit of a hard time. They just weren't consistently hitting quota. To their credit though, I mean, he really wanted to be good. Like, he really cared, which, I mean, I think that's really important too. And sometimes you don't maybe see that level of commitment and care. So I was committed to doing everything I could to help, not just from a business standpoint, but just from a personal standpoint. I wanted to see him succeed. Anyway, so what we did was we went through, we listened to a bunch of calls, gave some feedback, some advice, but I tried. This is, maybe early sales leadership for me, but I tried the script thing with him. I was like, hey, listen, here's exactly what I say in that situation. Here's the process I follow. Here's exactly how to say it. And, it works. It worked for me. I mean, he was doing the role that I had literally set the company record at. Right. And so it worked for me. It worked very, very well for me. And so fast forward a couple of weeks and, we're circling back up, doing our one-on-one meeting, and he was still struggling. And he's like, Josh, and I'll never forget this, because it was just like, it was like defeat. You could see it in his face, his whole face. He just looked sad, like a sad puppy look. He's like, look, I'm trying here, and I've been practicing the scripts. I memorized most of it, so I don't have to sit there and read it. I wanted it to sound natural. He's like, it's just not working. And so we listened to the calls, and the thing for him was, he was saying the exact words that I said, but he was saying it in a different way. Yeah. Which, I mean, again, not his fault. That's how he communicates. Sure. And so I tried to put him in this box of, hey, this is what worked for me. This was the script. It's a killer. I set a company record with this script, or these things. And it didn't work for him because it wasn't natural. He wasn't saying it like me. And so now what did he sound like? Sounded like some robotic sales rep. And people pick up on that right away.
Shut off.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. If we agree that scripts have some value, maybe early on, again, maybe using them as a guide to understand how a conversation should flow or where you're trying to go, what would you do then instead if you're prospecting and you're trying to get someone interested in booking a meeting or get someone interested in, you want to create this lead or this opportunity? How would you do that instead?
Yeah, so I think I'd come to that call with a hypothesis. Like, what are people in this person's role, this persona, what are they interested in? Like, what type of challenges are they facing? And I just try and have a conversation around that. I'd use some of my previous experience, like if I'm talking to people in the past, like what are they interested in? What challenges are they facing that they're trying to solve? And I talk about that, right? And our current customers. If I don't know any of that, then I just ask.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
I'd ask them in a nice and genuine way, because I am actually curious about what's going on with them and their business and how I can help. And so I think when you do that, like, also, not for nothing, but in sales, you can cheat, right? It's not a one person game. Like, you have teammates and people in your company that are doing really well. You don't have to copy them exactly, but you can take bits and pieces of what works for them and get it into yourself, right? Like, what works for you? How does it sound natural for you? And so you can cheat off of other people, not fraud, right? Like, don't
breaking rules here.
Yeah. Like, don't book meetings that aren't meetings or make calls that aren't calls. But
right.
At the same time, listen to what's working. Like, listen to those calls. What type of questions are they asking? What are people interested in? Like, what gets that engagement? You do that, and then you bring those to those calls, and you could brutalize the intros to those calls, and it's okay. But if you say something that's interesting or piques their interest,
right.
or other challenges that people in that situation are facing, or that business or that line of work or whatever it looks like, and it piques their interest, you now have a conversation, right? And you're asking about it. I talk to my reps all the time about a former conversation, right? What are you doing this weekend? And I use this example pretty consistently. What are you doing this weekend? If they tell me they're going to the movies, my next question is, what movie are you going to see? Right? Oh, did you see the reviews for that? And then we have a full-on conversation based on that one conversation. It's like you're that one question. You're peeling back the onion, right? You're going layers deep on that one initial question. So if you can get that and spark their interest, you can have a 3.5, 4 minute long conversation about the problems and the challenges they're facing, what they're trying to do to solve them, and how it impacts their business. And you can book a really, really well qualified meeting.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? It's like, it's not just about booking a meeting, creating a lead, creating an opportunity, right? If you do it the right way, and you have this sort of, by the way, you said a lot there that I want to talk about, because I think a lot of that was really, really good, and I want to make sure that, you know, folks, you're understanding some of the nuance here and how to apply some of that. So, you know, first of all, I think that one of the really important bits there when you're having this sort of like interaction is it being a genuine interaction, right? Sure. And so, you know, we talk about this even on the selling side when you're going through discovery and you're trying to, you know, understand where they're at, their current state, those types of things. You know, you're not just rapid firing scripted questions at people, right? You don't just ask. It's not like here, for example, let's just do this activity just to sort of drive this point home. If you and I were having a conversation, say we didn't know each other, we just met.
Sure.
I come up to you and I say, you know, hey, what's your favorite color?
It's going to be green.
What kind of car do you drive?
A Ford.
Who's your favorite sports team?
Carolina Hockey Hurricanes. Come on now.
So that's a weird initial conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if I just keep nailing you with questions like that, or worse yet, I just start jumping, and this is something we see all the time in prospecting. I think you'd probably agree, but just jumping into a pitch, right? So it's like, you know, hey, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue, that's great. I love blue. So look, the reason for my call is I think I've got something here that could really help you out, and you know, I'm going to tell you about it. Like, that's weird.
It's odd.
Like, no, but for some reason, I don't know why, when people are in this sort of sales role, they forget about, like, you're talking to another person. Like, this is just a conversation you're having.
They put on their sales
That's right.
sales voice.
That's right. Sales voice, sales hat. They get so focused on trying to book the meeting or sell the deal that they forget. It's like, hey, look, let's just have a real conversation. And what you said I loved, which was just be genuinely curious. Like, you know what it is you're trying to do. You know what your intended outcome is. That's book the meeting or create the lead, create the opportunity, right? So in order to do that, like, you can get there, but you can get there by having a genuine conversation where you're kind of steering the conversation in a way where, then this is where I think some of the process stuff comes in. It's more about structuring an organic conversation with a kind of a process for how you navigate that, rather than like using specific words or scripts. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So then, to kind of put a bow on this for you guys, like, what can you do? How can you change your prospecting approach when you're first talking to someone? Like, what would be your top, maybe one or two things that someone can do from a prospecting standpoint to, like you said, ditch the script? And by the way, this aligns with pitchless selling, right? So we also have our pitchless prospecting program. So we train people all the time on how to how to do this. But I'm curious from your perspective, like what are one or two things our listeners can do right now if they're in a prospecting role to increase the likelihood that they're booking more meetings and better meetings?
Yeah, that's a really good kind of question and segue. I did say green and blue are my favorite. They do happen to be.
Yeah, what's
my
up with the
favorite
different colors?
Well, lift off.
Okay.
I mean, it's blue.
Big blue.
So,
yeah, big.
it's
Okay.
blue.
Appreciate that.
But I think what folks can do right now is kind of change their mentality a little bit. So if you think that there's two possible outcomes to every call, right? Two best possible outcomes. One of them is going to be that you qualify them in and you book the meeting. The other is going to be that you qualify them out, right? And you're not wasting your time, your rep's time, and their time. And so if you go in with that attitude and the mentality of, hey, I need to figure out like what's important to them. If our solution even makes sense for them, like, is it going to be helpful? If you go in with that curiosity, that level of curiosity, you're going to ask better questions. You're not going to be so focused on booking that meeting that you're going to have a better conversation and a real conversation. You're going to care about what they're doing and be curious about what problems they're facing and how your solution could potentially solve them. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you do that and change the mentality, you'll automatically have a better conversation. And you'll think to yourself, okay, cool, there's two outcomes. Qualify them in or qualify them out. I need to have a conversation in order to do either of those. You'll have better conversations. You'll book better meetings.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we didn't even talk about that. You know, there's this sort of stigma, right? Of, well, I don't want to qualify people out. Like, I got to book as many meetings as I can. And let me be clear on this, because I've got a pretty firm stance on this. When you're prospecting, I don't think you need to overqualify people necessarily. We see that a lot, and especially in like the tech industry where we, you know, the teams that we train in the tech world, there tends to be a sort of disconnect between seller and prospector, because of course sellers want, you know, sure, they want people showing up. Hey, everything's good.
Credit card in
hand,
exactly. Invoice ready.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, we're ready to buy. Sure. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's not really how it should be.
We do too, by the way.
Of course.
So on the prospect, we do too,
yeah,
because we love when deals close.
Yeah, exactly. But again, at the end of the day, I think like you shouldn't fight to try to qualify someone out. Again, that's the sort of sales, and this is, again, a takeaway for you listening to this, is that's the sales hat side of things. You're focusing too much on the sales side of it and less on, hey, is my product or service genuinely a good fit? Because you don't have to go down this sort of rabbit hole of overqualifying or qualifying people out. Yeah, that should be a part of the process. But the real crux to the conversation should be based on, can we help these people? Like, is what we're selling a good fit? And then if it is, these are the logical next steps. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why when you go in with the mentality of qualifying in or out, you're going to figure out if it's a good solution or not. Yeah. And you're going to come to the conclusion whether it is and you should move forward, or it's not and you're not going to move forward. And everybody will be thankful.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
AOs, you're going to book better meetings. They're going to be higher quality. People will be ready. And if they're not, and it's not a good fit and your product can't help them, then your AOs are going to be thankful, or AEs are going to be thankful for that too, right? Because they don't want meetings where we can't help the customer.
Yeah. And you yourself, like if you're booking meetings for yourself, like think about it. It's cool on paper to be like, hey, great, I booked a meeting today. But you also, on the flip side of that, don't want to just book a meeting to book a meeting, right, where you show up and now, you know, you're fighting an uphill battle. This is not a good fit. You can't actually help them. Now you've just wasted your time. You could have spent that exact time that would have on that bad meeting, booking a better meeting.
100%.
Right. So it's not necessarily about just book the meeting to book the meeting.
Right.
All right, cool. So, you know, I appreciate that. I think that there are, just based on, again, one of the reasons we're talking about this today is we're seeing a lot of the people that we're talking to who are either in our program now, both the pitchless selling program and the pitchless prospecting program. But, you know, even people who are just coming to us asking questions or looking for information, we're hearing this a lot lately with, hey, you know, a company has this, you know, script, or we've got this specific thing. So I'm really, really curious about this as a sales leader, right? If you prescribed, let's say the company was prescribing a script, reps are supposed to use the script.
Sure.
Now you've got, I don't want to confuse people here where it's like, hey, look, to be clear, we're not trying to get you in trouble. We're not trying to say, hey, you know, forget what your company's telling you to do, forget what your managers, leaders are telling you to do. Because there's an element of, obviously, you know, you have a job. You're being paid to do a job, right? Yeah. So what would you do if you're a rep who's been given a script, you're supposed to use that script? What would you do to kind of take some of the advice that we've been giving, but also sort of keep that within the context of, well, I still got to use this script.
Yeah, I think it depends on the script too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if the script is doing what we talked about, I would use it as a guide, right? You don't want to say things verbatim, word for word, like dollar, like you don't want to do that. You want to make it your own anyway, and you want to make it so that it's conversational and you're caring about those people on the other end of the line. Like what are their problems? What are they facing? How can we help solve those challenges for them? How can we help these people out? And so I would use whatever script that you're given as a guide. I would incorporate part of that into the process and just make sure that you're covering that base, but you're also doing what you need to do to make sure that your prospects are finding value through the conversation that you're having with them, asking really good questions, being conversational, being genuinely curious, and making sure that we can actually help them and then move forward with that conversation. So like if a script has a really good close, cool, use it. Right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Like you should do that. But if the script doesn't have any questions, you should add them in and incorporate what we're talking about here today. So that way you make your customers happy.
Yep. There you go. I think that's perfect. I think that's great advice. So hopefully everybody, pick that up. If you got to rewind this thing to go back and listen to that was gold. I love that. And I think you can absolutely take a script and find opportunities to work in genuine organic conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the selling, closing side of things, right? And so, same thing goes for scripts on the selling side. I think that the difference here, while a lot of the advice I think is probably applicable to the selling side, I think that one slight difference in scripts on the selling side is that obviously a selling process or a sales process takes there's a huge maybe variety of lengths of sales cycles, conversations that have to happen. Sometimes you have to do a demo. Sometimes there's just a lot of details that you typically have to talk about as it pertains to your product, your service, those types of things, right? And so when I've been coaching some of our reps on the scripts that they have or using the scripts, I found that there are a couple of really important areas to kind of separate themselves. And we break our program down into like discovery, presentations, closing, objection handling, right? And so first off, love the guide thing. I think that especially in a sales conversation, you've got a longer window where you could use a script, but also still have plenty of opportunities to, kind of like you were saying with your advice, work in some of that genuine organic, conversation. Yeah. So that's like number one, all the way across the board. You can do that with selling or closing as well. But I'm gonna start with the discovery piece because this is an area in the closing and selling process that we see people have very specific questions that they're told or taught to ask, scripted out, right? So like think about some of even the trainings, corporate trainings and stuff, sales training you've been through, right? Mm-hmm. Have you seen some of the other like sales trainings or sales methodologies out there that are especially discovery focused, where it's like, do this, ask this, then ask this? Yeah. Is that pretty common?
Yeah. Even in prospecting, it's common.
Yeah.
Right? But on the sales cycle too, I think what we're talking about and using it as a guide is terrific advice there too, because there's going to be some good questions there.
For sure.
Typically those questions will relate back to some of like the principles, but you need to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. You can't fire those questions at everybody and expect genuine good answers and open-ended, you have to use it as a guide. Ask open-ended questions. Typically, right, scripts, especially on the selling side, will have some really good social proof and like different advice there. So like I would use that as a guide. But those questions, they're like typically they're the top of the line questions.
Exactly.
You need to dig deep.
Conversation starters, right?
Right.
So that brings me to exactly the advice that I give a lot of the sellers, and this is what I'll tell you now as well. If you're a sales rep, you're selling a product or service, and you've been given a script or slides, especially, man, you see, like, the tech world, slides are big, both in the discovery and then the presentation side.
95 slides.
Slide
you're supposed
deck.
to take a few of them.
And see, Here's the thing about this, right? Like you said, there's good information in there. And a lot of times there's important information about your company, your product, your service. Maybe it's social proof. Maybe it's details about the product. That's all information that you need to convey. Here's the mindset shift I want you to make though. When you're going through these things, I want you to look at your script. Again, not trying to get you in trouble, not trying to tell you to, just forget what the company's doing. because there's definitely good stuff. There's I'm surely good stuff in there. What I want you to start doing is start looking for opportunities. Once you've used the information that you need to use, look for opportunities to take your sales hat off and just be a human. Just have this genuine interaction. It's like if you have a scripted question, sure, start the conversation with that question, but then listen. Listen to what the prospect says. Don't be concerned about your next step or your next slide or your next question. Respond like you were actually standing there talking to them, right?
There's some gold in those. So what I've noticed, so I've managed AEs as well in full sales cycle. What I've noticed in that is people are so focused on what they should be asking next,
right,
that they miss buying signals in the answer to the question that the customer is giving. And they just completely disregard it and move on when they should really, really dig into that aspect, because you'll get some gold in there. But people are so focused on what question they need to ask next and making it sound good that they're missing that opportunity. You had mentioned conversation starter as those questions. Like think of your script as a starting point. Yeah. Right? Like you gotta dig deeper than that.
For sure. Yeah. I think that so this is actually just, it's funny that you said the answers, there's gold in the answers. So we just had one of our small group coaching calls just yesterday. Actually, we were talking about this exact thing where prospects will tell you how to sell them. They will often tell you, in some cases, if you're really good at this, they'll flat out tell you how to sell them. And you just have to be good enough at getting to that point, having that conversation in such a way where they tell you those things. If you don't, they're not just going to be like, hey, as soon as you start talking to them, it's like, yeah, hey, look, this is what I need, this is what I want. If it costs this much, I'll buy it. That's not what I mean when I say they'll tell you how to sell them. What I mean is, if you have a genuine open conversation, you're learning about them, learning about their situations, their needs, their problems, their challenges, these types of things. You can then use that information to position, and this is the selling side of things, maybe a little bit different than the prospecting side, but then you can use the information they give you to position your product or service as the thing that they need, the perfect fit. And so I'll transition from sort of the discovery part of selling and scripts to talk more about scripted presentations. And this is the one that we see all the time. So we work with sales reps across all kinds of different industries, insurance industry and, home improvement industry, solar, tech sales is a big one. I mean, I'm just listing a few, but there's a ton of different industries that we train. But one thing that's really interesting is pretty much every industry, they have this sort of set presentation. It's not necessarily always scripted word for word, but it's like, I got to talk about this. I got to talk about this. I got to talk about this. It's these things that they hit on. Yeah. Every presentation is almost the same. And so while I understand that maybe you're presenting those things because they've worked in the past or they're key differentiators or they're big value adds for most people, what you need to do, again, this is the tip, stop talking about your product or service in a way that's just generic, or it's just, hey, this is how we're different, or this is how, it adds value for most people, or this is why people have liked it. Don't just talk about the facts or the features or the thing of the solution. You have to shift and talk about the product or service that you're selling in a way that actually matters to somebody. Yeah. Like, so for example, it's like, hey, look, you had mentioned, Brandon, that you're struggling with this. So one of the cool things about what we do here is we have this. Does that seem like that would maybe solve that problem for you? And that's just, again, a generic sort of structure for how I would present something. But in that way now, I started by setting up what I'm going to talk about, like the thing, like why it matters. Yeah. Now they're listening, right? Because it's custom to them. I show them or talk about the thing, the feature, the benefit of our product or service. And then I conclude it with some sort of confirmation question where it's like, hey, are you seeing where this would solve that problem? Does that seem like kind of what you were hoping for? And so when you mentioned the AEs that you've managed, right? Have you seen a difference between when someone just maybe like presents the features, the benefits, like a canned sort of presentation versus, maybe more of a custom presentation? And if so, what do you think is like one of the biggest things that, obviously I don't want to just set you up for like a layup here, but like theoretically the outcome.
No, please do.
Yeah. But like theoretically the outcome would be better. Like
sure.
if you present it in a way that actually matters. But I'm curious about like what you've maybe seen in the past between those two styles in terms of what that means for the deal, for the sales rep, for getting the deal closed, those types of things.
Yeah, I think, for the AE groups, you have this massive slide deck that you can choose different slides from that all have really good information on it and all sorts of stuff. But that information, like pick out what your customers care about. Mm-hmm. Right? Your customers don't want to see a slide on a point that they didn't mention, they have no interest in, just
Bingo.
because you think they might. Like,
bingo.
You got to do a much better job of asking the questions on the front end and then listening. I think listening is the most underrated and most important skill that a salesperson can have, because you're listening for that gold. You're listening for how to structure your presentation to sell to them, mm-hmm. right? Because you don't want to just go through the deck and you're mentioning all these things that they just don't care about. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So make it just about them. What's specific to them, customize that presentation. How does it solve their challenges and problems? And then confirm that it does. And you can do that by listening on the front end, customizing those slides or that presentation to what your customer cares about. And you're going to have much better results on the back end, right? They know when you're going through the motions.
That's right.
Like your customers know when you're going through the motions. If you're presenting a deck that you didn't talk about, or they didn't talk about, and it's not important to them, they're just going to go through the motions too, and they're going to say, "Cool, follow up with me in a month."
Bingo.
Right? But
Bingo.
Those customized presentations that are pinpointed on their specific issues or problems or challenges that your solution can solve and how it solves them, and even better, how it solves them better than everybody else in the marketplace. Like you're going to win more deals. You're going to close more business and faster.
That's right. And fast. So look, by the way, like you said at the very beginning, we're not scripting this, right? This wasn't, but what's funny is what you just said is exactly where I'm going next. So like that is the sort of bow on this whole conversation is you'll close more deals and you'll close them faster. So what, and of course this is part of the, pitchless selling program. We go through this whole sort of process. And so we're seeing people increase close rates by 49%. Increase their average deal size by around 39%.
That's incredible.
But also shortening the sales cycle by almost 50%. So they're closing more deals for more money in almost half the time. They're not doing that because the product is the same. They're selling the same thing. It's just that they're able to present, first of all, they get the information they need up front, and then they're able to present their offer in a way, their thing in a way that actually resonates with that individual prospect. And that is what moves deals forward. Let me be clear about this. You don't need some fancy psychological based sales script. You don't need any sort of like tricks or techniques to get people to buy from you and to buy more quickly. What you need to do is get people to very clearly and quickly see that what you're selling helps them. It's that simple. If they themselves are motivated internally to get whatever it is, to buy whatever it is you're selling, guess what? They'll buy it, they'll pay more for it, and they'll move it through the process more quickly because they want it. It's them that wants it, and that is a huge difference in what we're doing. So, for example, one of the people in our and he said we can talk about it, but one of the reps in our program. Was working with us on the prospecting side, stayed with us because of the success that was happening on the prospecting side, ended up going through the selling program, moving into a closing role, and within just 2 months, so most junior rep, by the way, most junior seller on his team, within 2 months of being in the pitchless selling program was the number one rep on his entire team. Now, I'm not saying that to be like, whoa, way to go, pitchless selling is so good. The reason I'm talking about this is because their company relies heavily on scripts and slides. That is their sales process. When you become a seller there, it's like, here's the slide deck. They've had company meetings where leadership's like, hey, we really need to use the slide deck. Make sure you're using the script. Make sure you're using the slides. And so there was a little bit of a, it's like, hey, it's like, I have to use the slides. I have to use and so I'll tell you out there, if that's you as well, I'll tell you the same thing I told him, which was use them. I'm not trying to tell you to do something different. You should use them. Do what your company is telling you to do. You have a job. They're paying you. They want you to do those things for a reason. But there are absolutely opportunities that you have within the context of the things, script, whatever, that you can do to be even better. And that's why this particular rep went within, like I said, 2 months of being in the program, most junior rep on the team, number one seller. He wasn't doing what everyone else was doing, right? So I think that's just some proof of maybe not that it's necessary, but that's some sort of proof of the difference between selling with scripts or following this sort of rigid, robotic, even other sales trainings out there. Not to sound, I won't say anything bad about our sales trainings. I think there's a lot of really good info, a lot of great sales trainers in the world that are trying to teach people to be better at their jobs. I think one of the pitfalls, though, of some of those things is people saying you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, talk a certain way, bring the fake energy, get people excited, use these exact scripts, right? I don't think that's what sales is all about. I think sales is about having that genuine conversation with people.
Yeah, connecting with people, helping them solve challenges and problems that they face to make their life and their company's life better.
Totally agree. Okay, awesome. So hopefully that that has been helpful for you guys out there. If you're prospecting, if you're selling, maybe you're doing both. Again, I think the big takeaway from today, and maybe to sort of summarize everything, is whether or not you're given scripts or you're supposed to use scripts or slides or anything like that. We just don't want you to forget the sort of human element of selling. So take every opportunity you can to be genuinely curious about your prospects or your clients' current situation, and look for ways that you can genuinely help them. Get excited about helping people. And if you do that, you'll be far, far more successful either at prospecting or at selling. So with that said, Brandon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for doing what you're doing. It's making a difference.
Yeah, it's nice of you to say. I hope so. Maybe we'll have you back. It'd be great to have you back sometime, and maybe soon. All right, folks. Thanks as always. Thanks for being here. Couldn't be doing this stuff without you guys. The whole reason we're here is try to help people change their lives, and hopefully this episode will help you, even if it's just a little bit. Every little bit matters. So thanks for being here. Make sure to follow us so you don't miss any future episodes. And of course, you can share this with anyone else you think it would help. Thanks a lot, and be great.